Everyone, my name is Alex Depew, and today I'm going to be showing you guys what it's like to dye your hair with henna hair dye. I had the henna tree for the plant in my plant presentation, and so most of you guys have probably already seen that I brought in this block of henna hair dye and showed it with my presentation. But today I'm going to be continuing on with that and showing you guys what it is actually like to dye your hair with henna hair dye. This dye itself is just a small block. Normally they're bigger than this, but it's from Lush and it is in the color Rouge. Normally, when you have henna hair dye, it starts out as a powder, which is made from drying and crushing henna leaves from the henna tree. In this case, it's a little bit different because it's already in a block, so we'll actually be using this in a slightly different way. You get the same effect though. But in this case, you take the block and you cut it up into smaller pieces, and you use a double boiling method to melt the block of dye. You do this by taking a pot of water, you boil the water, and then you put another pot or a bowl on top and start melting down the dye, and you add a little bit of water every once in a while to get it to a good consistency. After that, you just take the paste and put it all over your head. Normally you let it sit for about 4 hours or so, and then you just go and rinse it out like you would rinse out normal hair dye, and you are good to go. But before I go into showing you guys all of the steps that goes into the process of doing this, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of background information about henna hair dye. So henna contains lawsone, which is what makes the henna dye work, and it binds to the proteins in your hair without creating any damage. So that's why it's a really good option for dyeing your hair if you don't want to get like fried ends or anything like that. But the longer you leave it on your hair, the deeper the dye is going to penetrate, because the lawsone will have a longer amount of time to bind to all the proteins in your hair. So even after you rinse out the dye, the lawsone that is still in like your hair follicle or your hair pieces of hair, it will continue to bind to those proteins and will bind to more and more proteins, so then you'll get a deeper dye. So even after about 2 days after you've dyed your hair, you can still get to a deeper color, but after about 2 days, the dye is pretty much maxed out and you won't get anything deeper than the color you have then. But today I'm going to be taking the dye and putting it on some extensions that I bought. They are 100% human hair. So they should take the dye pretty nicely. And so I'm going to do that. And I'm also going to get a little piece of cloth, just white cloth that I have just around my apartment. And I'm going to take that and put the dye on that as well, just so you guys can kind of see the comparison on how it looks on hair and how it looks on a different type of fabric. Okay, so now I have melted down the dye. You guys can kind of see it there. And I'm just going to take this paintbrush that I have, and I'm just going to put it right onto the extensions. I have them sitting on the counter over here just so I don't make a mess with some newspaper and stuff, but I will show you guys when it is. So now I have taken all of the dye, put it onto the extensions and the little piece of fabric I have right there. I'm going to let it sit for about 4 hours or so and rinse it all out. I'll show you guys what it looks like now. It's been about 4 hours, and I have now washed all the dye out of the extension and the cloth. So here is what the extension looks like. You can see this is the original color, and then this was what the dye added. And then here is the cloth. In the hair, it made more of like an orangey, bright kind of color, and in the cloth, it made more of a brown color. But overall, I think it was a pretty good representation on how henna hair dye works, and I'm glad you guys all took the time to watch my video. Thanks.